The space around Jupiter twisted and cracked like broken glass. Massive ships pushed through the tiers in reality, their dark red hulls gleaming under the distant sun. One by one, the Vorthok hegemony fleet emerged from hyperspace, bringing death to another star system. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth grow larger on the main screen. His reptilian eyes studied the blue and green world with the same cold interest he had shown to 1,000 other planets. Another conquest, another species to break and enslave. The ship around him hummed with deadly purpose. Plasma cannons charged along its hull. Quantum shields flickered to life. The hegemony had perfected the art of conquest over millions of years. They arrived, they destroyed all resistance, and they took what they wanted. It was simple. It was efficient. It always worked. "Report," Kethvar commanded, his voice a low hiss that made his bridge crew snap to attention. Science Officer Zaltek consulted his instruments. "The third planet shows signs of basic technology, Admiral. Chemical rockets, primitive fusion reactors, simple communications networks. Population approximately 8 billion members of a species calling themselves humans." Kethvar's mouth curved in what might have been a smile on a less dangerous face. "Fusion technology? How amusing. They are still burning rocks for power like children playing with fire." The tactical display showed Earth in perfect detail. Cities glowed like tiny jewels across the continents. Ships moved slowly between the planet and its single moon. Satellites orbited in neat patterns, broadcasting their simple radio signals into space like a child, shouting in a forest full of predators. "Any defensive capabilities?" Kethvar asked. "Minimal, sir. They have nuclear weapons, but nothing that could threaten our shields. Their space presence is limited to a few mining operations and research stations. Standard conquest protocols should be sufficient." Kethvar nodded. He had conquered species with far more advanced technology than these humans possessed. Some had fought back with energy weapons that could crack moons. Others had built fortress worlds that took years to break. But in the end, they all fell. They all knelt before the hegemony. "Begin standard approach. Prepare the ultimatum," he ordered. As the fleet moved toward Earth, strange readings began appearing on the sensor displays. Zaltek frowned at his instruments, tapping them with one clawed finger. "Admiral, I am detecting some unusual gravitational patterns around the gas giants, and the asteroid belt shows geometric formations that should not exist naturally." Kethvar barely glanced at the readings. Sensor echoes. These primitive systems often create false readings. Focus on the target world. But the strange readings continued. Saturn's rings pulsed with energy signatures that made no sense. Several of Jupiter's moons showed perfect spherical shapes that seemed too regular to be natural. Even the asteroid belt appeared to have patterns in it, as if the rocks were arranged by intelligent design. Zaltek adjusted his sensors again and again, but the readings remained. "Sir, these formations are highly unusual. Perhaps we should investigate before proceeding." "Nonsense," Kethvar snapped. "You are seeing patterns that do not exist. This is what happens when you spend too long in hyperspace. Your mind creates order from chaos." The flagship drew closer to Earth, and the planet's details became clearer. The humans had built cities in strange patterns. Some were arranged in perfect spirals, others formed geometric designs that reminded Kethvar of ancient star charts. But he dismissed these observations as coincidence. Primitive species often built in patterns without understanding why. The communication officer looked up from his station. "Admiral, we are in range to broadcast the ultimatum." Kethvar straightened in his command chair. This was always his favorite moment. The terror in the enemy voices when they realized their world was about to end. The desperate pleas for mercy that would never come. The moment when another species learned that the hegemony was unstoppable. "Open a channel to all human communication networks," he commanded. The main screen shifted to show his own image, which would now appear on every human television, computer, and communication device on Earth. He saw himself as the humans would see him, 2 meters tall, covered in scales that shifted from dark green to black, with eyes like burning coals. His uniform carried the symbols of his rank and the list of worlds he had conquered. It was designed to inspire fear, and it always succeeded. "People of Earth," he began, his voice carrying across space to reach every human on the planet. "I am Admiral Kethvar of the Vorthok hegemony. Your world has been selected for integration into our empire." He paused, letting the words sink in. On conquered worlds, this announcement usually caused immediate panic. Cities emptied as people fled in terror. Governments collapsed as leaders abandoned their posts. Military forces surrendered without firing a shot. "You have one standard day to surrender unconditionally," Kethvar continued. "Lay down your weapons, cease all resistance, and prepare for processing. Your species will be evaluated for usefulness to the hegemony. Those found suitable will be allowed to live as servants. Those found unsuitable will be eliminated." He gestured to his weapons officer, who activated a targeting display showing Earth's major cities. "If you choose to resist, we will demonstrate the futility of opposing the hegemony by destroying your population centers. Your nuclear weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Your primitive ships cannot match our speed. Your technology is thousands of years behind ours." Kethvar leaned forward, his burning eyes staring directly into the camera. "We have conquered 10,000 worlds. We have destroyed 100 species that thought they were strong enough to fight us. You are not special. You are not unique. You are simply the next world in our path." The transmission ended, and Kethvar settled back in his chair to wait for the human's response. It would be the same response he had heard 1,000 times before. Offers of tribute they could not afford. Desperate attempts at negotiation. Pleas for mercy from their leaders, and finally, acceptance of their fate. But minutes passed, and no response came from Earth. Then hours. The planet continued its rotation, its cities still glowing, its ships still moving between worlds, as if nothing had changed. Finally, just as Kethvar was about to order a demonstration bombardment, a signal reached his ship. It was calm, controlled, and completely unexpected. "Admiral Kethvar," came a human voice, speaking in perfect hegemony standard language. "This is President Chen of Earth. We have received your ultimatum. We respectfully request 24 hours to prepare our response." Kethvar stared at the communication console in disbelief. Not surrender. Not panic. A polite request for time. "Sir," his communications officer asked. "How should we respond?" The Admiral's claws drummed against his chair. In all his years of conquest, no species had ever asked for time to prepare a response. They either surrendered immediately or fought back desperately, but never this strange, calm acceptance combined with a simple request. Something was wrong. But Kethvar could not imagine what these primitive humans could possibly do in 24 hours that would make any difference. They were still just animals with simple tools, no matter how strangely they behaved. "Grant their request," he said finally. "Let them have their day. It will make no difference to their fate." Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, in a bunker that officially did not exist, the leaders of Earth gathered around a table that had never been used for its true purpose. President Chen looked at the faces around her. Generals, scientists, and politicians who had spent their entire lives believing they understood their world. In the next few hours, everything they thought they knew would change forever. Dr. Sarah Okafor entered the room carrying a briefcase that had been sealed for 70 years. Her hands trembled as she placed it on the table. She was the world's leading expert in what the scientific community politely called theoretical archaeology, the study of ancient structures that seemed too advanced for their time. Today, she would prove that her theories were not just correct, but terrifyingly understated. "The alien ultimatum has triggered protocols we hoped would never be needed," President Chen announced to the assembled leaders. "Dr. Okafor will now brief you on Project Sleeping Dragon." Sarah opened the briefcase and withdrew files that had been classified since World War II. The first photograph showed the Great Pyramid of Giza, but not as tourists knew it. This image revealed chambers deep beneath the structure, chambers filled with technology that no human civilization had ever built. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sarah began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to reveal. "Earth is not our home planet. It is our ship, The silence in the room was absolute. General Morrison, a man who had spent 40 years in the military and thought he had heard everything, leaned forward in his chair. Dr. Okafor, what exactly are you saying? Sarah activated a holographic projector that rose from the center of the table. A three-dimensional image of Earth appeared. But this Earth looked different. Instead of showing the familiar continents and oceans, the display revealed the planet's true structure. Beneath the surface, they all knew lay something impossible, a vast machine of incredible complexity. Earth's core is not molten iron, Sarah explained. It is a quantum processing matrix, capable of calculations that would require every computer on the planet working together for 1,000,000 years. Our tectonic plates are not geological formations. They are armor plating designed to withstand weapons that could shatter moons. She touched a control, and the hologram zoomed in on familiar landmarks. The Sahara Desert was revealed to be a massive retractable cover, hiding something enormous beneath. The Pacific Ocean showed mechanical structures on its floor that stretched across continents. The pyramids of Egypt, Stonehenge, the Nazca Lines, Easter Island, Angkor Wat. They are not ancient monuments built by primitive civilizations. They are control interfaces for the most powerful weapon ever constructed. President Chen had seen these files before, but hearing them explained aloud made her skin crawl with a mixture of terror and wonder. Tell them about our people, Sarah. The display changed to show DNA analysis charts and genetic mapping data. Humanity is not native to Earth, Sarah continued. We are the descendants of the crew of this planetary weapon. Our ancestors came from a civilization called the Terran Imperium, which once controlled much of the galaxy. General Morrison stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is impossible. You're telling us that every human being on Earth is descended from aliens? Not aliens, General. We are the aliens. The Terran Imperium was human, but not like we are now. They were explorers, scientists, and warriors who spread across the stars until they encountered something that nearly destroyed them. The same Vorthok hegemony that is now orbiting our planet. The hologram shifted to show ancient star charts, battle maps, and the scattered remains of a galactic civilization. Sarah's voice grew quieter, more somber, as she explained what the files had revealed. The war lasted for centuries. The Terran Imperium fought bravely, but they were outnumbered. World after world fell to the hegemony. Billions died. In desperation, their greatest minds conceived a final plan: transform their homeworld into the ultimate weapon and hide it where their enemies would never think to look. Hide a planet? Asked Dr. Petrov, the Russian representative. How does one hide a planet? Hide a planet by making it look like a natural world. They covered their planetary weapon with soil, water, and atmosphere. They seeded it with plant and animal life. They made it appear to be just another world in an unremarkable star system. Then they went into deep hibernation, their memories suppressed, their technology dormant, waiting for the day their enemies would find them. Sarah's hands moved across the controls, and the display showed Earth as it had been millions of years ago. A mechanical sphere gradually being covered by the familiar continents and oceans. The plan worked too well. The survivors forgot who they were. They forgot their technology, their history, their purpose. They became farmers and artists and dreamers. They built new civilizations from the ground up, never knowing they were actually the crew of a sleeping weapon. President Chen stood and walked to the window, though it showed only the rock walls of the underground facility. The alien ultimatum has begun the awakening process. Ancient protocols are activating all across the planet. Sarah, show them what is happening right now. The display switched to live satellite feeds from around the world. In Egypt, the Great Pyramid was glowing with a soft blue light that pulsed in steady rhythms. Stonehenge's massive stones had begun to hum with energy that could be heard for miles. The Nazca Lines were burning with light visible from space, revealing themselves to be circuit patterns of incredible complexity. But the changes were not limited to ancient monuments. People around the world were reporting strange dreams, memories that did not belong to them. Farmers found themselves understanding advanced physics without knowing why. Children drew pictures of star maps they had never seen. Teachers solved mathematical equations that would have challenged university professors. The genetic locks are breaking down, Sarah explained. Humanity is remembering what we truly are. Deep beneath the ocean, automated systems that had slept for millions of years were coming online. Tectonic plates shifted with mechanical precision. The magnetic field that protected Earth from solar radiation revealed itself to be a defensive grid of staggering power. General Morrison was staring at the displays with the expression of a man watching his entire worldview crumble. If this is all true, why didn't we know? How could something this massive be kept secret? Because it was designed to be forgotten, Sarah replied. The memory suppression was so complete that only the deepest emergency protocols could break it. The arrival of the hegemony fleet triggered those protocols. Earth is waking up, and so are we. President Chen turned back to the group, her face grave but determined. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 18 hours before the hegemony expects our surrender. In that time, we must prepare for something that has never been attempted before. The full activation of a planetary weapon system that has been sleeping since before human civilization began. The hologram now showed Earth in its true form. Not as a world, but as a ship. A ship larger than anything that had ever existed. Covered by continents and oceans. Hiding weapons that could reshape star systems. The Vorthok hegemony thinks they are facing a primitive civilization. President Chen continued. They have no idea they have just awakened the most dangerous weapon their species has ever encountered. Around the table, the leaders of Earth began to understand the magnitude of what was happening. They were not just defending their planet, they were preparing to crew the ultimate expression of human engineering. A world ship designed by their ancestors to be the final word in any galactic war. Outside the bunker, across the planet, billions of humans began to remember things they had never learned. And Earth itself began the process of remembering what it truly was. Admiral Kethvar had waited long enough. 24 hours had passed, and the humans had sent no message of surrender. No desperate pleas for mercy. No offers of tribute, just silence from the blue world that spun peacefully below his fleet. Time has expired, he announced to his bridge crew. Begin bombardment of the primary population centers. Show these primitives the cost of defying the hegemony. The weapons officer's claws danced across his console, targeting the largest human cities. Plasma lances charged and ready, Admiral. Shall we begin with their capital centers? Yes. Destroy their seats of power first. Let their leaders watch their civilization burn before they face their own deaths. Across the hegemony fleet, massive weapon systems swiveled toward Earth. Plasma cannons that could melt mountains began to glow with deadly energy. Quantum torpedoes armed themselves in their launch tubes. The assembled firepower was enough to crack a moon, and it was all aimed at one small planet that had dared to remain silent. Fire, Kethvar commanded. Streams of superheated plasma lanced through space toward Earth's surface. The weapons moved at nearly the speed of light, giving the humans no time to react or take cover. In seconds, the major cities of Earth would be reduced to glowing craters, and the planet's resistance would be broken forever. But the plasma streams never reached their targets. As the deadly energy approached Earth's atmosphere, the planet's magnetic field suddenly blazed with impossible brightness. The northern and southern lights exploded across the entire globe, creating a barrier of energy that caught the plasma weapons and absorbed them completely. The atmosphere itself had become a shield. On his flagship's bridge, Admiral Kethvar stared in disbelief at his weapon displays. Every plasma lance showed a successful hit. But the planet below remained unchanged. No explosions. No fires. No destruction at all. Report, he snarled. The weapons officer frantically checked his instruments. Sir, our weapons fired successfully. But the planet's magnetic field somehow absorbed the entire bombardment. This should be impossible with their level of technology. Fire again. Double the power. The second bombardment was even more massive than the first. Every weapon in the hegemony fleet fired at once, sending enough destructive energy toward Earth to sterilize the entire surface. But again, the planet's defensive field absorbed the attack completely, and then Earth began to change. From orbit, The hegemony fleet watched in growing horror as the planet's surface started to shift and move. What they had taken for natural continents revealed themselves to be massive mechanical structures. Africa rotated on hidden axis points, exposing an enormous gun barrel that stretched across what had once been the Sahara Desert. The barrel alone was larger than most of the hegemony's capital ships. The Pacific Ocean began to drain away, water disappearing into hidden reservoirs beneath the sea floor. As the ocean emptied, it revealed a launch bay of incredible size, large enough to build and deploy fleets that could span star systems. The Himalayas, the tallest mountain range on Earth, suddenly unfolded like a massive flower blooming. The peaks split apart to reveal sensor arrays and communication equipment that immediately began scanning the hegemony fleet with instruments far more advanced than anything they possessed. "Admiral," the communications officer reported, his voice shaking with fear, "we are being scanned by unknown technology. And sir, they are taking control of our automated systems." Warning lights began flashing across the bridge as Earth's awakening technology reached into the hegemony ships and began turning their own systems against them. Navigation computers started feeding false information. Weapons systems locked onto their own fleet members. Life support systems began fluctuating in patterns that seemed almost playful. But the most terrifying change was happening to Earth's moon. The small gray satellite had always seemed unremarkable, just a chunk of rock orbiting the planet. Now, its surface began to crack and peel away like an eggshell. Beneath the rocky exterior lay something that made Admiral Kethvar's blood run cold in his veins. The moon was a weapon, a massive, spherical gun platform bristling with energy cannons that could reduce his entire fleet to atoms with a single coordinated firing sequence. And as he watched, those weapons began to charge. In Brazil, Captain Maria Santos was experiencing the most extraordinary moment of her life. She had been a fighter pilot for 10 years, one of the best in the world. But she had never felt anything like this. As she placed her hand on what tourists thought was an ancient temple wall, her consciousness suddenly expanded beyond her own body. She could feel Earth's vast systems coming online around her. Power grids that spanned continents. Sensors that could detect ships in other star systems. Weapons that could reshape the surface of moons. All of it was responding to her touch, waiting for her commands. "Terra 1, full activation," she whispered, somehow knowing the words without understanding where the knowledge came from. The planet ship responded to her voice. Across Earth's surface, millions of hidden systems came alive at once. The Great Wall of China revealed itself to be a massive antenna array. The Grand Canyon opened like a flower to expose missile silos containing weapons that existed only in theoretical physics papers. Antarctica's ice cap slid aside to reveal computational centers that could process information faster than the combined technology of 100 advanced civilizations. Maria's awareness expanded further. She could feel every human on Earth, their minds suddenly connecting to the planetary network. Farmers in Iowa found themselves instinctively understanding quantum mechanics. Children in Tokyo began drawing schematics for faster-than-light engines. Elderly people in nursing homes remembered battles fought among distant stars. The genetic memory locks were breaking down everywhere. Humanity was remembering who they really were, not primitive cave dwellers who had learned to use fire, but the descendants of a civilization that had once built ships capable of moving between galaxies. Terra 1 to all stations, Maria broadcast, her voice now reaching every human on Earth through systems they had never known existed. "This is Captain Santos. All crew members, please report to your stations. It's time to go to work." Around the world, humans began moving with sudden purpose. They walked to seemingly random locations. The center of crop circles, the tops of ancient mounds, the basements of buildings that had stood for centuries. And when they arrived, they found control interfaces waiting for them, designed for human hands and human minds. The awakening was complete. Earth was no longer pretending to be a natural world. It was Terra 1, the Terran Imperium's final weapon, and it was fully operational. Admiral Kethvar watched his tactical displays as they filled with new contacts. Ships were launching from Earth's surface, not the crude chemical rockets he had expected, but vessels that moved with the grace of living things and the power of miniature suns. They formed up in attack formations that demonstrated tactical knowledge far beyond anything in the hegemony's databases. "Sir," his science officer reported, his voice barely a whisper, "this is not a planet. This is a weapon platform. And it is older and more advanced than anything in our records." The Admiral's claws clenched around his command chair as he realized the truth. The Vorthok hegemony, conquerors of 10,000 worlds, had not discovered another primitive civilization to enslave. They had found the survivors of the only enemy that had ever truly frightened them, and those survivors had just woken up. Terra 1's sensor arrays swept through the solar system with the thoroughness of a master detective examining a crime scene. As the ancient scanning technology reached full power, it began detecting things that had been hidden for millions of years. Things that made Admiral Kethvar's worst nightmares seem like pleasant dreams. "Admiral," his science officer whispered, staring at displays that showed impossible readings, "there are massive objects throughout this system. Objects that were not there when we arrived. Objects." Kethvar moved to the sensor station, his scaled hands gripping the console as he tried to understand what he was seeing. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter was moving, not drifting slowly as asteroids should, but repositioning itself with mechanical precision. Individual asteroids were changing course, forming geometric patterns that could only mean one thing. "Those are not asteroids," he said quietly. "They are ships." One by one, the asteroids began shedding their rocky disguises. Centuries of accumulated debris and dust fell away like old clothing, revealing the sleek hulls of warships beneath. Each vessel was massive, easily the size of the hegemony's largest dreadnoughts, and there were thousands of them. Ceres, the largest object in the asteroid belt, cracked down its middle like a hatching egg. The two halves drifted apart to reveal something that defied comprehension. A battlecruiser so large, it could have been mistaken for a small moon. Its hull was marked with symbols that the hegemony's computers recognized from their oldest historical files, Terran Imperium military designation codes. But the horror was only beginning. Several of Jupiter's moons began showing signs of mechanical activity. Europa's icy surface split along hidden seam lines, revealing that the entire moon was actually a hollow construction hiding a fleet carrier. Ganymede and Callisto followed suit, their surfaces peeling back to expose shipyards and weapon platforms that had been dormant since before human civilization had learned to work metal. "How many ships?" Kethvar demanded. His tactical officer's voice cracked as he read the displays. "Sir, we count at least 3,000 capital ships in the asteroid belt alone. The Jupiter system contains what appears to be an entire naval construction facility. And sir, there are energy signatures suggesting similar installations around Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune." Dr. Okafor stood in the ancient chamber beneath Geneva, her consciousness linked to Terra 1's vast memory banks through technology she was only beginning to understand. The planet ship's historical records were opening before her like a book written in starlight, and the story they told was both magnificent and terrible. "The final battle of the Terran Imperium," she whispered to President Chen, who stood beside her as the awful truth unfolded. "It was not a battle at all. It was the greatest strategic deception in galactic history." On the holographic displays around them, the true scope of the ancient plan became clear. The Terran Imperium had not simply hidden their homeworld and waited for rescue. They had prepared the ultimate trap. When the hegemony destroyed the outer worlds of the Imperium, Sarah continued, her voice filled with awe, the survivors did not just flee to Earth. They brought their entire remaining fleet with them. Every ship, every weapon, every piece of technology that could be saved. The displays showed the solar system as it had been millions of years ago. Massive fleets had arrived from across the galaxy, carrying the refugees and survivors from 100 conquered worlds. But instead of making a final stand, they had done something unprecedented. They disguised their fleet as a natural solar system, Sarah explained. Ships were covered with ice and rock to look like asteroids. Weapons platforms were hidden beneath artificial crusts to resemble moons. Entire naval bases were camouflaged as planetary rings. President Chen stared at the tactical readouts in disbelief. "You mean every asteroid, every moon, Every piece of space debris in our solar system might actually be a hidden warship? Not all of them, but enough to make the Vorthok hegemony's invasion fleet look like a child's toy collection. Captain Santos felt the weight of command settling on her shoulders as Terra 1's systems fed her tactical information. Her consciousness now spanned the entire planetary defense network, and through it, she could sense the awakening fleet throughout the solar system. Ship after ship was coming online, their crews emerging from genetic memory storage that had lasted for geological ages. On Titan, Saturn's largest moon, hidden hangar bays were opening for the first time in millions of years. The moon's thick atmosphere had concealed construction facilities that could build starships faster than any current technology. Ancient assembly lines began moving as if they had been shut down yesterday instead of epochs ago. But perhaps the most shocking revelation was happening on Mars. The red planet had always seemed dead and empty, its surface scarred by ancient impacts and geological activity. Now those scars were revealing their true nature. They were not natural formations at all, but the landing strips and defensive positions of the largest military base in the solar system. Mars began to transform. Its polar ice caps slid aside to reveal massive space elevators. The Valles Marineris, the largest canyon in the solar system, opened like a book to expose shipyards that stretched across continents. What astronomers had thought were extinct volcanoes erupted not with lava, but with newly constructed warships rising from underground factories. Terra 1 to Mars Command. Maria broadcast across the ancient communication network. This is Captain Santos. Please confirm operational status. The response came back immediately, spoken by a voice that carried the authority of someone who had been waiting millions of years to hear those words. Mars Command operational. Terra 1. General Harrison, reporting for duty. All construction facilities at full capacity. We are ready to resume operations. Admiral Kethvar watched his tactical displays fill with more enemy contacts than his computers could track. The hegemony fleet, which had seemed so overwhelmingly powerful just hours ago, was now outnumbered by a ratio that made resistance seem meaningless. But the numerical disadvantage was not the worst part. As his science officers analyzed the emerging Terran ships, they made a discovery that filled even veteran hegemony warriors with terror. Admiral, the chief science officer reported, his voice hollow with defeat. The enemy vessels are not just more numerous than ours. They are more advanced. By several orders of magnitude, the Terran ships moved through space with an elegance that spoke of technology the hegemony had never imagined. They did not simply fly. They danced between gravitational fields, using the forces of space itself as highways. They did not merely fire weapons. They manipulated reality at the quantum level, turning energy into matter, and matter into energy with casual precision. How is this possible? Kethvar demanded. Our intelligence indicated this species had barely achieved interstellar flight. Sir, I believe our intelligence was deliberately deceived. This is not a primitive civilization at all. This is the remnant of an empire that was already ancient when our species first left their homeworld. Captain Santos opened a communication channel that reached across the entire solar system, broadcasting to every awakened ship, every revived crew member, every human who was remembering their true heritage. People of Earth, children of the Terran Imperium, she said, her voice carrying the weight of history and the promise of justice. We have slept too long. We have forgotten too much. But we remember now. We remember who we are and what we were built to do. Across the awakened fleet, millions of humans who had spent their lives as farmers and teachers and artists were taking their places at weapons consoles and navigation stations, their genetic memories providing knowledge that would take lifetimes to learn. The Vorthok hegemony believes they have come to conquer another primitive world. Maria continued. Let us show them what it means to wake a sleeping dragon. Admiral Kethvar stood on his bridge, watching as the tactical situation became hopeless with each passing moment. The hegemony fleet was trapped in the middle of a star system that had revealed itself to be the largest military installation in galactic history, and they were about to learn why the Terran Imperium had been the only civilization the hegemony had ever truly feared. The battle began and ended in moments that stretched like years. Admiral Kethvar gave the order to retreat, but Terra 1 was already 3 steps ahead of him. The planet ship's quantum processors had analyzed every possible escape route and closed them all with surgical precision. Gravity wells appeared around the hegemony fleet like invisible chains, holding their ships in place while reality itself seemed to bend around them. "Weapons free," Captain Santos announced from her position deep within Terra 1's command center. "All ships, engage at will." The response was not the chaotic battle that Kethvar had expected. Instead, the Terran fleet moved with the coordination of a single mind, controlling 1,000 hands. Ships that had been disguised as asteroids for millions of years fired weapons that turned space itself into a weapon. Beams of coherent gravity crushed hegemony vessels without ever touching their hulls. Quantum disruptors reached through dimensional barriers to shut down enemy reactors from the inside. But Terra 1 was not simply trying to destroy the invading fleet. It was demonstrating something far more profound: the difference between conquest and justice. "Admiral Kethvar." Maria's voice reached the hegemony flagship through communication channels that should not have existed. Her words appeared directly in his mind, bypassing his ship's systems entirely. "You are guilty of genocide against 1,000 species. You have enslaved entire civilizations. You have turned the galaxy into a graveyard." The hegemony admiral found his ship's weapons offline, his shields down, his engines dead. Around him, his bridge crew sat frozen as Terra 1's advanced systems took control of every function on their ship. Yet they were not being destroyed. They were being judged. "We could kill you all in an instant," Maria continued. "We could reduce your ships to their component atoms. We could erase your entire species from existence. But that would make us no different from you." Across the solar system, the awakened Terran fleet was performing an impossible feat. They were disabling the hegemony ships without destroying them, capturing an entire invasion force without firing a single shot that could kill. Tractor beams made of twisted space-time held enemy vessels motionless. Boarding parties appeared on hegemony ships, not through airlocks or by cutting through hulls, but by stepping through dimensional portals that opened in their corridors. Dr. Okafor stood before the main display in Terra 1's command center, watching as the planet ship accessed the hegemony's own databases through their captured communication networks. What she saw there filled her with both rage and determination. "My God," she whispered. "Maria, you need to see this." The data streams flowing through Terra 1's systems revealed the full scope of the hegemony's crimes. Star charts marked with the symbols of dead civilizations, archive footage of planetary bombardments, slavery records listing billions of sentient beings as property. The complete catalog of a galactic empire built on suffering. "Show me everything," Maria said, her consciousness expanding to process the terrible knowledge. For a moment that felt like hours, Captain Santos experienced the deaths of 1,000 worlds. She felt the terror of species facing extinction. She heard the final transmissions of civilizations that had fought bravely and died alone. She saw children torn from their families and sold in markets on distant worlds. But she also saw something else: resistance movements on occupied planets, hidden colonies of survivors from extinct species, underground networks of freedom fighters who had never stopped believing that someday, somehow, justice would come for their oppressors. "New mission parameters," Maria announced to the fleet. "We are not just defending Earth. We are liberating the galaxy." Terra 1's vast computational networks began calculating faster than light jump coordinates for every ship in the awakened fleet, not to attack more hegemony forces, but to reach the enslaved worlds that needed rescue. Admiral Kethvar watched in stunned silence as ships began disappearing from around his captured fleet. Not destroyed, but simply gone, vanishing through holes in space that opened and closed like blinking eyes. In minutes, most of the Terran fleet had dispersed across the galaxy, carrying freedom to worlds that had almost forgotten what the word meant. "Where are they going?" he asked, though no one on his bridge could answer. The answer came from Maria herself, her voice now carrying the authority of someone who spoke for an entire awakened civilization. "To every world you have conquered, to every species you have enslaved, to every corner of the galaxy where your empire has brought darkness." On the occupied world of Zirion Prime, the local hegemony garrison was conducting their daily oppression of the native population, when reality tore open above their capital city. A single Terran battleship emerged from hyperspace, its hull marked with symbols that the oldest Xerians remembered from ancient legends. People of Xerion, the ship broadcast in the native language, your long night is ending. We are the Terran Imperium, and we have come to restore your freedom. The liberation was swift and complete. Hegemony weapons proved useless against ships that could manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. Slave collars fell away, as Terran technology overrode their control systems. Prison camps opened their gates as dimensional portals appeared to carry the oppressed to safety. Across the galaxy, the same scene played out on 1,000 worlds. The Vorthok hegemony's empire was not being conquered. It was being dismantled with surgical precision by forces they could not understand or resist. Back in the Sol system, Admiral Kethvar found himself face to face with President Chen. She had somehow appeared on his bridge without triggering any alarms, walking through his ship's security systems as if they did not exist. "How?" was all he could manage to say. "You made the same mistake that every conqueror makes," Chen replied calmly. "You assumed that strength meant the ability to destroy. You never learned that true power is the ability to create, to build, to protect." Around them, the Admiral's bridge crew sat motionless, held gently but firmly in place by fields that felt warm to the touch. They were not being harmed, but they could not move, could not reach for weapons, could not call for help that would never come. "Your empire is ending," Chen continued. "Not because we are destroying it, but because we are offering something better. Every world you enslaved now has a choice. Continue serving the hegemony that oppressed them, or join a galactic community based on cooperation instead of conquest." The president activated a communication device that connected her to Terra One's vast network. Images appeared in the air around them, showing the liberation efforts proceeding across the galaxy. On world after world, former slaves were choosing freedom, and former oppressors were laying down their weapons rather than fight a battle they could never win. "What will happen to us?" Kethvar asked, his voice empty of the authority that had once commanded 1,000 ships. "That depends on what you choose to do next," Chen replied. "We are offering amnesty to every member of your species who renounces the hegemony and works to repair the damage you have done. The galaxy has room for everyone, even former conquerors, if they are willing to become citizens instead of masters." Captain Santos felt Terra One's weapon systems powering down as the last hegemony resistance was overcome. The planet ship's defensive screens flickered and faded, revealing Earth's blue skies once again. But the transformation was permanent. Humanity would never again forget what they truly were. Terra One to all stations. She broadcast across the awakening human civilization. Primary mission accomplished. Beginning Phase 2 operations. Galactic reconstruction and species reintegration. The moon's weapon systems retracted back beneath its surface, but they remained ready. The hidden fleets returned to their concealment among the asteroids and planetary rings, but they continued their patrols. Earth looked like a peaceful world again, but it was now the heart of a reborn galactic civilization. In the months that followed, the galaxy watched as the Terran Imperium's children built something unprecedented, an empire based not on dominance, but on cooperation. Former slave worlds became equal partners. Extinct species were restored from genetic archives. Technologies that had been suppressed by the hegemony were shared freely among all civilizations. The Vorthok, as a species, chose cooperation over extinction. Most of their people renounced their empire's crimes and joined the new galactic community. Those who could not accept the change were allowed to settle on worlds where they could live in isolation. Their weapons permanently disabled, but their lives spared. Admiral Kethvar became something he had never imagined he could be: a teacher. He traveled from world to world, speaking to young people about the price of conquest and the value of peace. His stories of the hegemony's crimes became cautionary tales that helped ensure such darkness would never return to the galaxy. And on Earth, children played in fields beneath skies that were bluer than they had ever been, never knowing that their playground was actually the bridge of the most powerful ship in the galaxy. A planet-sized guardian that slept lightly and watched over a universe finally learning to choose cooperation over conquest. The Empire had arrived at Earth to conquer another primitive world. Instead, they had awakened something far greater than they could have imagined. the conscience of the galaxy itself.